Hey TV Maniacs, I'm KG and yes, we're back with yet another batch of miniseries you can finish before bed. As always, you can binge these from the comfort of your sofa, alone, with friends or with your cat, judging your taste. I'll share 12 amazing picks from prestige dramas and historical epics to mind-bending sci-fi and psychological thrillers with some truly awesome hidden gems. So grab a hot beverage and let's jump right in. If you've been here before, you know I'm a sucker for anything Mike Flanagan, and The Fall of the House of Usher is Flanagan at full power. Operatic, vicious, heartbreaking, and darkly funny. The premise is deliciously cruel. Roderick and Madeline Usher are the ruthless siblings behind a pharmaceutical empire, the kind of modern dynasty built on money, influence, and bodies. But when Roderick's 6 adult children start dying in increasingly horrifying Edgar Allan Poe-coded ways, the whole house of cards begins to collapse. Framed through an interrogation with an investigator, the show becomes a confession, a reckoning, and a very stylish autopsy of wealth, power, and consequence. The cast is basically Flanagan's all-star squad firing on all cylinders. Bruce Greenwood is terrific as Roderick, polished, haunted, and slowly unraveling, while Mary McDonnell plays Madeline like a blade in a designer suit. Carla Gugino is the show's secret weapon as Verna, an otherworldly figure who slinks in and out of the Usher's lives with the calm menace of inevitability. And then you've got an absolute parade of familiar faces: Mark Hamill, scene stealing as the family's terrifying fixer, plus Flanagan regulars like Henry Thomas, Kate Siegel, Rahul Kohli, Samantha Sloyan, Nia Miller, Zach Gilford, and Willa Fitzgerald, each getting a showcase moment as the doomed heirs and the people orbiting them. It's an 8-episode limited series, about 8 hours in total, perfectly doable as a one-day binge if you're ready for a rich, decadent descent into moral rot. Creatively, this is Flanagan doing something really fun. It's not a straight Poe adaptation, it's a remix, weaving multiple Edgar Allan Poe stories and imagery into one modern saga about corporate corruption, addiction, and family legacy. The tone is pure gothic excess, it's nasty, tragic, and often wickedly entertaining, like Succession got possessed by Edgar Allan Poe and decided to punish everyone. Watch it if you want horror with style and substance, a binge that's equal parts macabre, spectacle, family drama, and moral comeuppance with performances that make every episode feel like a last confession. If you want a miniseries that starts like cozy comfort TV and slowly turns into a full-blown psychological mystery, Wandavision is still one of the most inventive things Marvel has ever done, and an insanely easy finish before bed binge. Wanda Maximoff and Vision are living the perfect suburban sitcom life, except none of it makes sense. Every episode jumps through a different era of television: black and white classics, colorful family sitcoms, modern mockumentary vibes, and with every decade shift, the cracks get wider, the laughs start to feel forced, the neighbors start acting off, and you realize this isn't just an homage to TV history, it's a woman building a reality she can survive inside. Elizabeth Olsen is phenomenal as Wanda, because she sells both sides at once, the charming sitcom heroine and the person quietly breaking underneath it. Paul Bettany is back as Vision, equal parts warm, funny, and increasingly unnerved as he starts questioning the world he's trapped in. Created by Jack Schaefer, the show's big creative swing is that it uses the sitcom format as a lens for grief. The series doesn't just do Marvel but funny, it builds this uncanny, nostalgic comfort blanket and then slowly reveals what it's hiding. That's why it hit so hard when it dropped. It's a superhero story, sure, but it's also about denial, loss, and what happens when someone with full power can't accept reality. It's 9 episodes, typically 30 to 50 minutes each, and it's structured like a mystery box binge. Every episode answers a question and raises 2 more until it all clicks into place. The show also racked up 3 Emmy Awards plus 3 Golden Globe nominations, but the bigger flex is that it made people who don't even watch Marvel suddenly start watching Marvel. The tone is the real magic trick, warm, nostalgic, and funny on the surface, then eerie, claustrophobic, and heartbreaking underneath. And the closer you get to the truth, the more emotional it becomes. Watch it if you love high-concept storytelling, mystery with heart, or you want a Marvel series that actually feels like a bold creative experiment, one that starts starts playful, gets haunting, and sticks the landing emotionally. If you want a miniseries that's equal parts hilarious, harrowing, and historically explosive, The Good Lord Bird is the rare period drama that feels genuinely alive. It takes one of the most mythologized figures in American history, abolitionist John Brown, and tells his story as a darkly comic, blood-soaked odyssey that somehow still lands as deeply human. The genius hook is the perspective. The story is told through Henry Onion Shackelford, a fictional enslaved boy who gets swept up into Brown's ragtag band of abolitionist fighters during Bleeding Kansas. Onion is mistaken for a girl early on, and that mistaken identity becomes this constant survival mechanism as he's dragged through chaos, raids, speeches, betrayals, brutal violence, all building toward the infamous Harper's Ferry raid. It's not framed like a clean hero's journey, it's messy, absurd, terrifying, and constantly asking, what does conviction look like when the world is built on cruelty? Ethan Hawke is spectacular as John Brown, wild-eyed, ferociously righteous, deeply charismatic, and absolutely exhausting to be around. He plays Brown like a man possessed by fate and fury, with enough contradictions to keep you guessing whether you're watching a saint, a fanatic, or both. And Joshua Caleb Johnson as Onion is the emotional anchor, observant, funny, increasingly disillusioned, and always trying to stay alive in a story driven by men who keep calling it destiny. Created by Ethan Hawke and Mark Richard and adapted from James McBride's award-winning novel, the series is very intentionally not a solemn museum piece. The creators leaned into a tone that swings between farce and tragedy because the era itself was grotesque. Violence was normal, hypocrisy was law, and survival often depended on playing a role. Hawke has described Brown as a figure who forces uncomfortable questions, not was he good or bad, but why do so many people accept the unacceptable? It's a 7-episode limited series, making it a clean one-day binge that keeps escalating toward an ending you know it's coming, but still hits like a punch. The atmosphere is dusty, chaotic, and weirdly electric, with a constant undercurrent of dread because the stakes aren't theoretical. This is America hurtling towards civil war, and the show never lets you forget the human cost behind the ideology. Watch it if you want a historical mini-series that doesn't feel respectable. Something sharp, provocative, surprisingly funny, and emotionally punishing, with an old-timer performance from Hawke at the center. If you want a miniseries that feels like watching a modern fairy tale curdle in real time, The Dropout is the ultimate how did this happen binge. It's the rise and fall story of Theranos, the Silicon Valley blood testing company that promised a medical revolution and delivered one of the most infamous corporate fraud scandals of the century. The series follows Elizabeth Holmes, a young Stanford dropout who builds an empire on vision, charisma, and the promise of a miracle machine that can run dozens of blood tests from a single finger prick. As investors, politicians, and the media start treating her like the next Steve Jobs, the show makes it painfully clear what's fueling the hype. Holmes doesn't just sell a product, she sells a story, and once the story starts cracking, the pressure to keep performing becomes its own kind of trap. Amanda Seyfried is genuinely mesmerizing as Holmes, capturing the voice, the intensity, the blank certainty, the way confidence can look like conviction even when nothing underneath works. Opposite her is Naveen Andrews as Sunny Balvani, her partner and COO, whose influence over the company and over Holmes adds a chilling layer of control and complicity. Created by Elizabeth Merriweather and based on the investigative podcast, the show leans into the psychology of the con rather than turning it into a simple villain gets caught story. The most compelling angle is how it portrays ambition as performance. The deeper Holmes goes, the more the company becomes a stage where everyone is incentivized to believe, or at least pretend they do. It's 8 episodes, so it's a clean one-day binge with a perfect escalation curve. Seyfried won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Limited Series for this role, and she also won the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Limited Series, which tells you exactly how hard she carries the whole thing. Tonally, The Dropout is sleek, tense, and increasingly claustrophobic. It's not an action thriller, but it moves like one because the stakes aren't just money, it's power, reputation, and the terrifying reality that real patients are caught in the blast radius. Watch it if you love true story prestige drama, corporate scandals, rise and crash narratives, and character studies where the most unsettling thing is how long a lie can survive when enough people want it to be true. If you want a miniseries that feels like a pristine black and white nightmare, elegant, icy, and quietly suffocating, Ripley is one of the most hypnotic thrillers Netflix has put out in years. It's not a fast, twisty binge, it's a slow, deliberate descent, and it's absolutely mesmerizing. The premise follows Tom Ripley, a charming nobody scraping up in early 60s New York when a wealthy man offers him a life-changing job. Go to Italy and convince his wayward son Dickie Greenleaf to come home. Tom accepts, and that's the first step into a world of sunlit privilege, effortless wealth, and the kind of life he feels entitled to. But once Ripley gets a taste of it, just delivering a message isn't enough. The series becomes a masterclass in social climbing, deception, and identity theft. The story of a man who doesn't just lie to get what he wants, but reshapes reality until the lie becomes his whole existence. Andrew Scott is extraordinary as Ripley, not loud or cartoonish, but controlled, watchful, and unnervingly patient. He plays Tom like a man constantly calculating his next move, even in silence. Opposite him is Johnny Flynn as Dickie, magnetic and careless in the dangerous way rich people can afford to be, and Dakota Fanning as Marge Sherwood, whose intelligence and suspicion make her one of the biggest threats to Tom's carefully curated performance. It's a perfect triangle: desire, denial, and dread, all tightening around the same lie. The 8-episode limited series is treated like noir literature brought to life, with meticulous pacing, long stretches of tension built through behavior rather than dialogue, and an obsession with detail that makes the world feel real down to the texture of the walls. The black and white cinematography isn't a gimmick, it turns Italy into something gothic and severe. The tone is slick, chilling, and quietly claustrophobic. Even when it's set in gorgeous Italian locations, it never feels like a vacation, it feels like a trap. The tension doesn't come from explosions or chase scenes, it comes from small social interactions where one wrong glance, one misplaced detail, one suspicious pause could collapse the entire illusion. Watch it if you love slow-burn psychological thrillers, noir atmospheres, and stories about identity where the real horror is how easily someone can become whoever the world will let them be. If you want a true crime miniseries that feels so grounded it's almost suffocating, Escape at Dannemora is one of the most gripping watches you can do in a day. It takes the infamous 2015 escape from Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, and tells it with zero glamour, just routine, rot, manipulation, and the slow, terrifying build of a plan that should never have worked. The story follows two inmates, Richard Matt and David Sweat, who don't break out through genius movie theatrics but through months of patience and access. Their leverage is Joyce "Tilly" Mitchell, a civilian prison employee in the tailor shop whose relationships with the man turn personal and then operational. The series isn't just about the mechanics of the escape, it's about how loneliness, desire, boredom, and small compromises inside an institution can snowball into something catastrophic. The casting is absolutely elite. Benicio del Toro plays Matt as charismatic and predatory, the kind of man who can charm you while sizing you up like prey. Paul Dano is chilling as Sweat, quiet and coiled with a frightening kind of focus. And Patricia Arquette is the emotional center as Joyce Mitchell. Messy, vulnerable, aching for attention, and painfully believable. She also won a Golden Globe for her performance. Directed by Ben Stiller, the show's biggest strength is its commitment to realism. The prison feels fluorescent, monotonous, and airless, and you can practically feel time dragging. You watch the plan form in tiny steps, and every step feels like a door quietly locking behind someone. The tone is bleak, procedural, and quietly nerve-shredding. When the escape finally happens, it doesn't feel triumphant, it feels like a system failing in slow motion. Watch it if you like true crime dramas that prioritize character and realism over sensationalism. Stories where the scariest part isn't the breakout, but how easily ordinary human weaknesses can be exploited until something irreversible happens. If you want a miniseries that feels like a true crime thriller and a slow-motion spiritual crisis, Under the Banner of Heaven is one of the most gripping and quietly devastating limited series. The story is inspired by Jon Krakauer's non-fiction book and begins with something horrifyingly real. In 1984, a young mother, Brenda Wright Lafferty, and her baby daughter are murdered in a quiet Utah suburb. The case lands in the hands of Detective Jeb Pyre, played by Andrew Garfield, a devoted devoted Mormon family man who believes in order, faith, and the idea that evil is something you can identify and remove. But as Pyre investigates the powerful, insular Lafferty family, he's pulled into a world of religious extremism, revelations, and justification by faith that starts to poison everything he thought he understood, not just about the case but about his own beliefs. Garfield is the engine of the series, intense, empathetic, and constantly fighting to hold himself together as the ground shifts under him. On the other side of the investigation are the Lafferty brothers, played with chilling conviction by Sam Worthington and Wyatt Russell, while Daisy Edgar Jones brings heartbreaking humanity to Brenda, smart, grounded, and increasingly trapped in a family system that keeps tightening around her. The series doesn't treat the case as a puzzle to solve and move on from. It's more interested in how belief can be weaponized, how communities protect their own, and how a person's identity collapses when the thing they trusted most becomes part of the darkness. It's 7 episodes, roughly an hour each. The tone is bleak, tense, and suffocating in a very specific way. It's not flashy, it's dread that builds through conversations, faith language, and the slow realization that good people can still do monstrous things when they believe they're commanded to. Watch it if you love true crime miniseries with real depth, something in the vein of Mindhunter or Mare of Easttown but filtered through religion, identity, and moral horror. If you want a glossy, high society murder mystery that plays like a slow-motion car crash, The Undoing is peak one more episode TV. It's the kind of miniseries where everyone is beautiful, everyone is lying, and the truth is hiding in plain sight, right up until the moment it ruins everything. The setup starts in Manhattan privileged land. Grace Fraser is a successful therapist with a perfect life, a wealthy husband, and a son in an elite private school. Then a young mother connected to the school is found brutally murdered, and overnight Grace's world becomes a media circus. The more the investigation unfolds, the more Grace realizes she may not actually know the person she married, and every comforting detail of her life starts to feel like part of the con. Nicole Kidman is excellent as Grace, poised on the surface, unraveling underneath, and Hugh Grant is weaponized perfectly here as her husband Jonathan, charming, evasive, and increasingly unnerving the longer you watch him talk. We also have Donald Sutherland as Grace's cold, controlling father. Created by David E. Kelly and based on the novel You Should Have Known, the show is basically a masterclass in tension by implication. The creators leaned into the idea of a modern whodunit set inside wealth, where perception is currency, reputation is armor, and the scariest part isn't the murder, it's how quickly people decide what they want to believe. It's 6 episodes, which makes it an extremely clean finish before bed binge. The tone is sleek, chilly, and claustrophobic. It's not about action, it's about suspicion, denial, and the slow horror of realizing your life might be built on someone else's lies. Watch it if you love psychological thrillers with rich people, raw messy marriage secrets, and performances that make you second guess every smile. If you want a miniseries that feels like a prestige crime thriller just set in a world of robots, Pluto is one of the smartest, most emotionally devastating sci-fi stories you can binge in a day. It's based on Naoki Urasawa's legendary manga, itself a reimagining of an Astro Boy arc, and it plays like Blade Runner meets True Detective, but with a heart the size of the universe. The hook is instantly gripping. In a near future where advanced robots live alongside humans, the world's 7 most powerful robots and a number of the humans connected to them begin getting murdered one by one. The only thread tying the crimes together is eerie and ritualistic. Each victim is found with horn-like objects placed near their head, as if someone is staging a message. The investigation falls to Gesicht, a Europol detective who happens to be a robot himself, and the deeper he goes, the more he realizes this case isn't just about solving a crime, it's about war, hatred, memory, and whether robots can inherit the same darkness humans do. Gesicht is the perfect protagonist for this story, calm, methodical, and quietly haunted, the kind of detective who looks composed until you notice how tired his eyes are. Around him, the show introduces a lineup of unforgettable figures. Adam, a childlike robot with terrifying potential, grieving creators, soldiers, families, and robots who have done unspeakable things in the name of peace. And the show keeps asking the same uncomfortable question from different different angles. If you can feel pain, what does that make you capable of? Throughout the 8 episodes, the pacing is deliberate and novelistic. Every episode deepens the mystery, expands the world, and pulls you closer to a truth that feels both inevitable and horrifying. Creatively, the series is remarkably confident. It doesn't over-explain its sci-fi, it trusts you to keep up. The animation is detailed and cinematic. It's not flashy anime spectacle. It's restrained, moody, and heavy, kind of show where a single close-up can feel like a confession. The tone is melancholic, tense, and deeply philosophical. There's violence, yes, but the real weight comes from grief, trauma, and the slow realization that the line between human and machine isn't intelligence, it's suffering. You'll finish it feeling like you just read an incredible novel you weren't ready for. Watch it if you love slow-burn mysteries, grounded sci-fi, moral complexity, and stories that leave you emotionally wrecked in the quietest way possible. If you like Black Mirror, Blade Runner, Chernobyl-level dread, or detective stories with real soul, Pluto is absolutely unmissable. If you want a mini-series that feels like a full-course meal, romance, heartbreak, philosophy, and battlefield spectacle, A&E's War and Peace is one of the most bingeable, epic literary adaptations ever put on TV. It's sweeping without being stuffy, emotional without being cheesy, and it somehow makes Tolstoy's brick of a novel feel immediate and addictive. Set against the Napoleonic Wars, the series follows 3 central characters whose lives keep colliding as history's stream rolls over them. Pierre Bezukhov, an awkward idealistic outsider who suddenly inherits unimaginable wealth. Natasha Rostova, a young woman with a huge heart and even bigger feelings. And Prince Andrei Balkansky, a disillusioned aristocrat chasing meaning through war, love, and loss. Around them you get the full tapestry, glittering balls, humiliating betrayals, family loyalty, sudden death, and those quiet, private moments where a person realizes their life is changing forever. The cast is amazing. Paul Dano is perfect as Pierre, restless, searching, sincere, a man trying to become someone he can respect. Lily James brings real spark and vulnerability to Natasha, and James Norton gives Andrei a brooding, restrained intensity that makes his arc land hard. You also got heavyweight support from Gillian Anderson as the icy social queen Anna Pavlovna. This adaptation keeps the grandeur but locks onto the emotional core. It doesn't treat the story like homework, it treats it like a full-on prestige soap set during war, love triangles, political ambition, sudden reversals, and characters constantly making decisions that feel huge in the moment and catastrophic in hindsight. The atmosphere is pure lavish period drama. It's romantic, tragic, and surprisingly punchy. Big emotions, sharp dialogue, and a constant sense that history is closing in no matter what these characters want. Watch it if you love sweeping historical dramas, complicated romantic entanglements, and character-driven epics that actually earn their emotional payoffs. If you want a mini-series that's equal parts war story, absurdist comedy, and existential nightmare, Hulu's Catch-22 is a razor-sharp adaptation that somehow makes the insanity feel hilarious, until it doesn't. It's one of those rare shows where you're laughing 1 minute and then suddenly realizing you're watching a machine designed to grind people down. The premise follows Captain John Yossarian, a US Army Air Forces bombardier stationed in Italy during World War II, whose only goal is beautifully simple: survive. The problem is his commanding officer, Colonel Cathcart, keeps raising the required number of missions, turning just make it home into an impossible task. Yossarian tries everything to get grounded, but he is trapped by the logic of the infamous rule: if you're sane enough to want out of combat, you're considered sane, which means you're not eligible to be removed from combat. That's the catch-22. The system is built so you can't win. Christopher Abbott is outstanding as Yossarian, frantic, exhausted, and increasingly furious as the world around him turns more surreal. The big-name supporting cast is stacked. Kyle Chandler is perfectly smug and monstrous as Cathcart. Hugh Laurie plays Major DeCoverley with a strange, sleepy charm that somehow makes him even more unsettling. And George Clooney pops in as Scheisskopf, the parade-obsessed lunatic who feels like a walking embodiment of military bureaucracy. The creative approach of the series is very clear. It modernizes the tone of Joseph Heller's novel without sanding down the bite. keeping the core idea intact that war isn't just violent, it's bureaucratically insane, and the people in charge can be more dangerous than the enemy. Tonally, it's sun-bleached and claustrophobic all at once. The humor is sharp, but the emotional aftertaste is bleak, because the punchline is always the same. The system doesn't care if you live. Watch it if you like smart, satirical war stories, dark comedy with real bite, or miniseries that feel like a surreal nightmare you can't wake up from. If Band of Brothers is the definitive European war story, The Pacific is its brutal, soul-scouring counterpart, a miniseries that drags you through the island-hopping nightmare of World War II and refuses to romanticize a second of it. Instead of following one unit the whole way through, The Pacific tracks the war through 3 real US Marines whose experiences reveal different faces of the same horror: Robert Leckie, Eugene Sledge, and John Basilone. You move from the early chaos of Guadalcanal to the meat grinder of Cape Gloucester and Peleliu to the apocalyptic brutality of Okinawa, and the show makes the Pacific theater feel uniquely harrowing. Suffocating heat, disease, mud, rain, insects, and an enemy you often don't even see until it's too late. The cast is stacked with then rising talent. James Badgedale plays Leckie with sharp wit and a haunted edge. Joseph Mazzello is heartbreaking as Sledge, whose innocence gets ground down into something raw and furious. And John Ceda brings real gravity to Basilone, the war hero turned symbol, trapped between duty, propaganda, and the reality of what combat actually costs. You'll also spot familiar faces early in their careers, including Rami Malek and others, which makes rewatches even more fun. Behind the scenes, it's executive produced by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, and it's based heavily on memoirs. The Pacific won 8 Emmy Awards and received a huge haul of nominations overall, and it also won the Golden Globe for Best Miniseries. It's one of the most decorated war miniseries ever made, and you can see why in the scale, the craft, and the sheer emotional weight. The tone is grim, visceral, and relentlessly realistic. Combat is confusing, ugly, and sudden. The violence hits hard because it feels physical and personal, not cinematic, and the quieter moments are often even more devastating than the action. Watch it if you want a war miniseries that doesn't flinch, epic in scope, brutally immersive, and emotionally wrecking. And that's part 4 of miniseries you can finish before bed. Proof that one and done format just keeps delivering. If you're sitting there and thinking, wait, where's that show? Chances are it showed up in part 1, 2, or 3, so definitely check those out next. And yes, there will be a part 5. Let me know in the comments which of these hit you the hardest, which ones you're binging next, and which miniseries you think absolutely deserve a spot in the next video. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share it with a fellow TV addict, and subscribe for more smart weekly recommendations. Thanks for watching, happy binging, see you in the next one, and remember, sleep is optional when there's one more episode.